Before we start this show, just a word from our sponsor, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest that pro wrestling has had to offer. Along with their awesome line of pro wrestling apparel, they do offer many services. In the world of wrestling, there are hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads. Don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. If you would like to discuss possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or whatever, drop them a line. Go to 20 by 20 Apparel. That's the number 20x, the number 20 apparel.com. Now, let's get to the show.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what are those. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop it tomorrow. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. Until I'm running out of breath, or tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, fresh, goddammit, we fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh is the Word podcast. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. On Fresh is the Word, we like to deliver wisdom through great stories from the minds of bright creatives of pop culture. Through those stories, we like to dissect the journey of our guests and present actionable lessons and advice for our listeners, no matter what career or avenue of artistry they pursue. And this is episode 107. This is pretty much a Halloween edition. It's Halloween week. And this week's guest is perfect for the week of Halloween. Spencer Charnas, vocalist of the Boston-based metalcore band Ice Nine Kills. The band has just released their 5th studio album, The Silver Scream, via Fearless Records, a concept album of horror movie-inspired madness with each song a tribute to a different iconic cinema classic. During our interview, we talked about Charnas' love of horror movies and the concepts behind the songs on The Silver Scream, his favorite horror movies, the progression of the band, and much more. Before we get into the interview, I definitely want to remind you how you can support the podcast. You can always go to freshasthepodcast.com and share any links that you see on the website on any of your social media. I also want to give a shout out to Knox Money, Bang Belushi, and Foulmouth for the theme music for Fresh is the Word. And you can subscribe to Fresh is the Word anywhere, pretty much anywhere. Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Stitcher Radio, Mixcloud, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Podbean, and Radio Public. Pretty much anywhere that you can subscribe to podcast, Fresh the Word is there. Just type it in, we'll probably be there. And if you could give a rating and review, that'd be great, especially on the Apple Podcast. That would help out immensely. And if you want to tweet along, Facebook along, Instagram along, whatever, post about any of the episodes that you listen to, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Kelly Omega Fresh, and at Facebook at facebook.com/KFresh. And you can follow Fresh is the Word online on Twitter at FITW Podcast, and Instagram at Fresh is the Word Podcast, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Fresh is the Podcast. All right, let's get into the interview with Spencer Charnas, vocalist of the metalcore band Ice Nine Kills. What was sort of, the idea going into this new album, The Silver Scream, on what you wanted to do with it?
Well, for me, I've always been just immersed in the horror films and the horror genre and the horror culture ever since I was a little kid. So it's always sort of permeated through whatever we've done in some respect, whether it was a lyric here and there or a song title or one of the concepts of our videos or our merchandise. But until now, we've obviously never done anything this full force, full throttle into the genre. So I thought it was the right time, man. We've really developed a legion of Ice Nine Kills fans that are really obsessed with horror films, and the last album's concept being about literature was sort of our first dabbling in what you would call a concept record, even though it's not necessarily a traditional concept record, but a record that has a clearly defined theme. And this was the next logical step, and for me, it just made everything that much more fun. I was writing about something that I'm so passionate about, and I thought, what a cool thing we could do is take this one medium of film and really, using the Ice Nine Kills style that we've developed, translate that into another medium of music. And it was, they say that if you're working with something you love, you never work a day in your life, and that's really how I felt about the process.
As a kid, what was the first thing that sort of got your attention that was sort of horror related?
Well, in my hometown, the grocery store that used to exist, that I used to go with my mom to, anytime she was going shopping, was I want to say it was called Stop and Shop, or Super Star Market maybe, and that grocery store had a video store within it. So whenever I would go with my mom when she would do her shopping, that's where I would kill time. I would go to the video store and pick out videos. And for whatever reason, I was drawn to that aisle that said horror. There was something like a little bit forbidden about it. And when I would walk through that aisle, I would just be completely enamored with the art on the cover of these VHS tapes that said Halloween and Friday the 13th Part 5 and Nightmare on Elm Street and Creepshow and all these really, really sick and twisted film franchises. And I wanted to know what this stuff was about. I don't know why I was drawn to it, but I just was. And my parents were cool enough to let me watch those films, probably thinking that I'd grow out of it. But, here I am 25 years later talking on the phone with you about an album based on these movies. So clearly I didn't grow out of it.
Right. What was the first movie that you absolutely loved?
I think the first horror movie that I ever saw was the original Halloween. And I must have been, 7, 8 or 9. And that film that started my love of the genre. And from there, I saw everything that you could get, I could get my hands on. And then I remember the first horror film I ever saw in the theater, because I had never seen any of the films in the theater. They had all come out basically in the 80s or early 90s, or I was too young to see them in the theater, because my parents didn't want to look like psychopaths bringing their,
right,
10-year-old kid to go see Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. But I saw Scream in the theater in 1996 when I was 11, and still to this day I can't find anyone who's my age. Everyone's seen Scream, but I can't find anyone who's my age that actually saw it in the theater. That's how cool my parents were.
Right.
And I was already a big fan of the genre, but that movie, being in the theater watching that opening scene, I can remember exactly how I felt when I saw it. And it was so amazing to see a horror film where the characters were referencing Michael and Jason and Freddy, and I was like, this is going to be my favorite goddamn film of all time. I knew it right there. And not only was it such a cool thing for genre fans because it was referencing these other films, but it was really scary. Scream has an element of comedy, but seeing that film, at least for me when I was 11 years old, it was just terrifying, that first scene. So that's one of my all-time favorites.
When did you first get into doing music?
When did I first get into doing music? I definitely started playing guitar after I got into Nirvana. When I was, this is probably 1994-ish. So I was like 8 or 9 years old. And from there, I just, it became an obsession. And I was playing and listening to bands that were far beyond my time. Like I remember, I think the first band that I ever had, we were like literally 10 or 11, and we were performing at our school's talent show, and we were playing Nirvana and Silverchair and Alice in Chains. So I was into it real early.
Like the band Ice Nine Kills has been around, it looks like, since about 2002, correct?
Yeah, I started in high school around that time, maybe even 2001, and we were originally very much like a pop punk ska band, playing like, Goldfinger and Real Big Fish and Less Than Jake influence music. And yeah, I never started a different band. I mean, I'm the only member from that original time period. But yeah, it's been a long time.
Like when you think about those early years and how like the band has progressed throughout the years, like what sticks out in your mind about just sort of like these like different incarnations of the band?
I think that, I think a lot of bands give up, if they don't necessarily, quote unquote, make it really fast off the bat. And to me, I've always sort of just enjoyed the journey and never been too worried about, we're not going to make it or anything. And I think that, maybe for a while in the beginning I thought that way, but as soon as I stopped thinking about that kind of stuff and just played what I loved, and that's when we started to see success.
What happened to make you stop thinking about that and just start enjoying yourself making and playing this music?
I think, I got a lot of advice from people over the years, don't wish your life away, and don't enjoy the process, because I think that if you make it right off the bat, if you don't have to struggle, and you get everything sort of handed to you, you don't really appreciate when you get it. And I think that sort of mentality stuck with me, and eventually I was able to adapt that mentality for myself.
What, like being the only original member of this band, what sort of obstacles have you had to get past throughout this whole journey of being a part of Ice Nine Kills?
I think just the entertainment industry in general is a very, very competitive landscape, and I think it sort of relates back to the previous question that you have to, if you really want to do this, if you really want to make it, if you really want to make this your career, you have to be patient and you have to work harder than anyone else around you, and you can't count on being lucky like a lot of bands get sort of lucky right off the bat. And, we had to struggle and pay our dues, and that's what you have to do. And I think that, we really buckled down and worked our asses off for years and years, and now we get to appreciate, where we are, and the fact that we have a legion of diehard fans that support us every step of the way.
During this whole journey, has there been anybody that you sort of looked up to who's been able to give you guidance about how to keep on going in that, really turbulent times of the music industry, how ruthless it can be?
Well, I think our manager, Mike Mallory, who's been with us for a number of years, who believed in us when no one else would and really took us under his wing, I think he's been a real guiding force in that respect.
Did you ever have like sort of like that holy shit moment where something happened, an event, somebody that you met, where you felt like, hey, this music thing could be something that I could do for a long time?
Yeah, for me, I go back to this story all the time. I was a big Goldfinger fan and still am. But back in high school, I think it was my freshman year. Yeah, it must have been like literally 2000. I went to see Goldfinger perform in Massachusetts at this venue called the Palladium in Worcester, and I had never seen them before. And there was something about the energy of that show. The first song, the first chord that the band played, the singer, John Feldman, jumped into the crowd and was crowd surfing as he was singing, and I was just like blown away by the performance, and ended up getting on stage with them and singing a part of the song, and I started the band that night pretty much. I actually have the date of that concert tattooed on me.
Oh, nice. Kind of getting back to some of the recent work of Ice Nine Kills, when you have like sort of these albums, like the last album where you had sort of a literary theme, and then you had the new album that has all these sort of horror themes, how does that translate into your live show? How do you, bring that energy out to your crowd?
I think I just try to, our music, especially the last two albums, the previous one, Every Trick in the Book, and this new one, Silver Scream, they're both so character-driven, and I try to really put the different characters into the vocal performances on the record. So, and by sort of trying to lose myself in that character when I was recording it, much like, I guess you call a method actor in film, they do that kind of stuff. So that's what I kind of try to do on stage. I just try to lose myself in the stories and try to get into the shoes of each of those characters and try to become them on stage.
How did you go about sort of making sure that all these characters that you kind of losing yourself into, that you're, doing an honest portrayal of what, where they came from?
Well, I think a lot of it, when you think of Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger, you don't think of them as singing. So it was definitely a process to try to figure out, hey, if these people were in a band, what would they sound like? And I think that was definitely a difficult process, but I tried to basically give my most accurate, I tried to be as authentic as possible as to what I would think if these characters were singing, they would sound like. We try to really look into the psychoanalysis of why they are who they are, and what kind of thoughts they would have. And obviously, for someone like Freddie, that's a little bit easier because Freddie, he speaks and he has a very sort of vibrant personality, whereas Jason and Michael are silent, but there's so much in their backstory and so much sort of to work with there and in what they do and how they behave, that I had to sort of cross the kind of put the puzzle together the best way I could with that information.
Who is the funnest character to try to dig into, and who is the hardest character?
I think that might be the same character, Pennywise the clown. Just because it's such a off the wall character, whereas it's kind of really the only character on the album that, as far as the murderers go, that has a side to him that is like playful and like joyous, but there's that darkness and evil just under the surface, just around the corner, waiting to eat you. You know what I mean? So it's like going back and forth between having to sing and then try to sound like someone that would be able to entice a child to come over and join him in his circus beneath the city, and then go rapid fire from that to basically the devil, you know. So that was really fun and challenging at the same time.
Are you how many videos are you planning to do for this album?
Well, if I had my way, I'd do one for every song. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that, but we've released 2, and we've got 2 on the way. And you know, depending on how successful the reaction is to the album and to the film counterpart of it, we'll see. I hope many more.
What went into the first 2 videos that you did? Which songs were those again?
The first 2 installments were The American Nightmare, based on Nightmare on Elm Street, and Thank God It's Friday, inspired by the Friday the 13th franchise.
What went into making those videos?
Basically, I had this idea to develop an overarching narrative that would weave in and out of the music videos, and got together with the production company we've worked with for a long time called Little Sky Productions, and got with their guy Daniel Horahan, brought him the concept, and then he kind of ran with it. He's really good at writing dialogue, he's a great director, and he's got a great crew behind him. And they were long, grueling shoots. The last ones we just finished up were just, you know, a couple of weeks ago, maybe even just like 10 days ago. And they were, you know, 4 days straight of working till like about 5 a.m. Really, really long, late shoots, and a lot of grueling work put into them. But it was fun, you know. I mean, for me, it's like sort of a kid in a candy store, in the sense that I love these films. I love them since I was a kid, and in a way, I get to sort of make my own version of them, and not only get to sing about them and write an album about them, but get to be in sort of our own little film world, you know, involving these movies, you know.
Would you ever want to be in your own actual horror flick?
I would love it, and in a lot of ways, that's kind of what we're doing. I'm in the videos, and I'm also the star of the narrative that we're sort of weaving in and out of them. So I've always loved film, and I've never really acted before, so I'm still kind of trying to figure out how to do that. It's really difficult. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to pursue that.
What would be sort of like your dream role if you were ever in a horror flick, something that maybe already exists, or to work with a horror actor or director? What would that dream gig be?
Oh man, I think that, I love Wes Craven. I love John Carpenter. Any of those guys. Unfortunately, Wes Craven's passed away, so that would be possible. But we're getting to work with, like, some of the new hot shots of the genre, like Rob Zombie or Eli Roth or Adam Green, and get to be in one of those movies, and just get involved as much as possible in this horror culture.
Have you ever met anybody famous from like the horror movie culture?
Yeah, I like to go to those conventions that they have once in a while in various different states, where the horror actors get together with the directors and writers. And I've met some really cool people over the years, everyone from Wes Craven to George Romero to Kane Hodder to Robert Englund, and recently Jason Lively and Ricky Dean Logan from some of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and Night of the Creeps.
Is there anything, else special that you might be doing surrounding this album, The Silver Scream, that might be, whether it's merchandise or things at your show or other promotions? Is there anything else you're going to be kind of doing special for this album?
Yeah, well, we have a ton of really cool events coming up in October that will celebrate the release, everything from a CD, an album listening party at the Michael Myers house in Pasadena, California,
Oh.
to a private party at the house from the original Scream that we're doing. We're going to be performing in the garage where Rose McGowan got killed in the original.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, we're just doing a ton of stuff. We have our own screening of the Silver Scream at the Salem Horror Fest in Salem, Massachusetts, with a Q&A panel with the cast and crew. We're doing a ton of cool stuff, and all the details of that can be found on our social media and website. And I'm just really looking forward to it.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier how like your fan base that you've been able to build over all these years was very helpful in building sort of what you've been able to do on these past two albums. What are the fans saying about, these past two albums? And then, how does sort of the things that you want to be doing and have done on this new album sort of been, received by your fans?
We always had a very, very loyal fan base. The kind of fans when we weren't on a record label that would, gather behind us on Kickstarter campaigns and, would raise, $30,000-$40,000 to put out our next album. So we've always had that really diehard cult element to what we've done over the years. But since the last album, Every Trick in the Book, and with the lead up of this album, we've seen our fan base get even more fanatical about what we're doing. And I think it's been exacerbated by the concepts that we've chose for these albums, because literature with the last album and film with this album, they really attract a certain kind of fanatical person that wants to know everything about the album, about the lyrics, about the books, and about the films we've chosen, and about future songs and merchandise items and limited edition vinyl. So the hype, I think, is at an absolute all-time high now. Just seeing Reddit forums and tweets and Instagram comments and Facebook comments, all, trying to guess what these songs are about, like which movies we've chosen, because we haven't explicitly said for every track which movie it's based on. I think that it just seems to grow and grow, and it's like we're creating our own sort of thing here, where it's like, I hope we can do like Ice Nine Kills conventions, like they do horror conventions, and really, please the fans, because I think part of the reason I know what they want is because I'm a fan myself of this kind of stuff, and I know what I'd like to see and hear.
If anybody was listening to this podcast, and even if they, even knew who Ice Nine Kills what were, it doesn't matter what they do, what would be something like a nugget of knowledge about your career that they could take out of this interview and apply it to their own life in regards to, what they should do, no matter what art form that they do?
I think that our band is really an example of something, an entity that didn't give up pursuing what we were interested in. And I think that a lot of bands that started when we started, I think most of them have probably broken up if they didn't reach some sort of success. And we were never consumed by that, and I think that's why we are starting to see more attention, and also we stayed true to who we were and who we've always been, and didn't try to cater to what everyone else is doing. And I think that there are a lot of artists out there that say, hey, how do we do this? Like, what are the bands that are succeeding, and what are they doing with their music? Like, how can we imitate that? And I think that that's a recipe for disaster. At the very least, it's a recipe. At the very best, it's a recipe for maybe having a song that people like and then fading away. But I think that the artists, much like the films we're covering, that do stand the test of time, are ones that try to do something a little bit different and try to go down a different path than everyone else is choosing.
Right.
And I think that kind of mentality is the recipe for success. And it might take days, months, or years, but I think that if you apply that sort of mentality to what you're doing, you're going to be a lot better off in the long run.
Great. Yeah, I always like to end all my interviews for this podcast with the same question. And that question is, who has been somebody that's been a part of your career that I could realistically interview and they would have some good stories or lessons to talk about?
I think probably Mike Mallory would be a great person to interview. He always loves doing stuff like that. He does mentoring online for upcoming bands. He hosts a podcast called Managemental, and I think he'd be a great person to talk to about that stuff.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Where can people go online to get more information about Ice Nine Kills and the new album?
The best place to do it is ice9kills.com. That's the whole number spelled out, so it's ICENINEKILLS.com. Also our Twitter, which is the same, Ice9Kills. And our Instagram is the only different one where the 9 is the number. So it's ICE and the number 9, KILLS.
All right, man. It's been great talking with you, man. Good luck with everything. Good luck with the new album.
Thanks so much, man. I enjoyed it.
So that was my interview with Spencer Charnas, vocalist of the Boston-based metalcore band Ice Nine Kills. Go ahead and support them and pick up that new album, The Silver Scream. Links to where you can listen to Silver Scream and follow Ice Nine Kills will be in the show notes for this podcast episode at freshthepodcast.com. So let's get to the Fresh of the Word Fresh Pick of the Week. This episode's pick is the Still Breathing EP from the band Fight the Fury. It's the new metal project from Skillet frontman and bassist John Cooper, along with Skillet guitarist Seth Morrison, along with the drummer Jared Ward and guitarist John Panzer III. It's definitely a cool little 5-song EP, so check it out. Links also will be in the show notes for this podcast at freshthepodcast.com, where you can order it, listening to it, and you can connect online with Fight the Fury. So that's another interview, another episode, another great podcast of information in the books. Thanks for listening. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.